Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Guys, today we're going to talk about shotguns. Are they good or are they not good for home defense? I put together a little presentation here with the different shotgun shells, 12 gauge versus 20 gauge. And I kind of broke them down so you can see what's in each one of them and which one would be right for you if you were using it for a home defense or whatever. We got a 12 gauge right there and got a 20 gauge right here that we'll talk about in a little bit, but a regular 12 gauge 2 3/4 slug is about 7/8 of an ounce, which is this right here, or 24.8 grams compared to a 30-06 bullet that's 9.6 grams or 0.34 ounces. So obviously this one's the deer slug is a bit heavier. The 12 gauge is accurate and deadly about up to about 200 yards. Anything past that is still lethal and will penetrate a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood at about 300 yards, but when you get further than that, it tends to drop every 4 feet every 100 yards. So we have 12 gauge and we have 20 gauge. 20 gauge slugs are always yellow, no matter where you buy them from. Mostly they're always yellow, and the reason for that is so people don't make a mistake and put this in their 12 gauge or whatever. Overall power and velocity, obviously the 12 gauge wins in comparison. The 12 gauge is just simply, it's too large for the 20 gauge to stand a chance. It delivers more speed and more power, obviously. But again, both are great for home defense, and we'll talk about why. A 20 gauge shot can deliver twice as much more power as a 44 Magnum. So if this can deliver twice as much power, a 12 gauge is probably 2 to 3 times more powerful than a 44 Magnum. They do come in multiple calibers. You have 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 16 gauge, 20 gauge, 28 gauge, and then you have 410, the small one. This is usually typical for new hunters or people new to the shotgun. They always start with a 410. Most fathers will get their young son, 14, 15, 16 years old, a 410 as their very, very first gun. It's a very, very popular round. And so 410 is, I'll tell you how they determine by they're measured by gauge, shotgun shells are, and I'll go more into that a little bit, but shotguns, except for the 410, are measured by gauges, which comes from the number of lead balls of the bore diameter required to make up 1 pound. So again, you determine the gauge by the number of lead balls in the bore diameter, which would be this right here, the bore diameter, to make up 1 pound. So if you do the math correctly, a 410 would be considered a 67 gauge. You'd have to do the math. I did it, but it comes out to be a 410 would be a 67 gauge, which is kind of weird. You know what I mean? A 10 gauge measures 0.77 of an inch. It's the largest lethal gauge for hunters in the United States. It's primarily used for turkey and waterfowl. I don't have a 10 gauge. A 12 gauge is a 0.729 of an inch, and it's the most popular gauge in the entire world, mainly for hunting moose, caribou, deer, bear, etc. A 16 gauge comes in at 0.685, and that's popular among a small group of upland bird hunters. I don't have a 16 gauge either. And then you have a 20 gauge that's 0.615, and that's popular among hunters and target shooters. And it's one of 4 gauges used in competitive skeet shooting. And then you have the 28 gauge, which comes in at .550. Like the 16 gauge, it has a following mostly of upland bird hunters as well. As I said, 410 would be classified as a 67 gauge. If it was measured like other shotgun gauges, it's a very light payload, very low recoil. Like I said, it's a very popular as a very first gun for most adolescent men, and this is the most challenging gauge used to shoot skeet out of. So, I did have a 410. Actually, that my first gun. My dad gave to me a 410. I don't have it anymore. It ended up breaking, and then I moved to a 12 gauge, a break action single shot. So, but as far as for home defense. Some people say yes, some say no. I would definitely use a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge for home defense. There's a lot of reason why, and I'll talk about that in a second. But again, 12 gauge, they have two primary focuses, and that's either for combat or hunting large game. When it comes to combat, whether it be military or home defense, the shotgun stops the enemy cold right in its tracks. So I broke down each caliber of a 20 gauge and shotgun and 20 gauge and 12 gauge here so you can see the difference when I'm talking about. So these deer slugs or slugs, they're 1 ounce slugs. Shotgun shells come in 2 3/4 inch, 3 inch, or 3.5 inch magnums, depending on what your gun allows in the barrel. So when you take apart your 12 gauge, you're left with a 1 ounce rifled slug like this. You can see the rifling on the actual slug itself, and that's for your rifled barrel to let it come out. And then it's packed in there with the wadding and some other little plastic components in there that help pack the shotgun load in there, all that. And it actually has a full pop cap full of gunpowder, so that's a lot of powder. If you have a bottle of pop at home and you want to fill up with powder, so that's a lot of powder coming inside of there. And that's the deer slug. And then the double-aught buck, there's either a double-aught buck with either 9 or 12 balls. So this is a load that has 9 double-aught buck in there. There's 9 total that's in this wad here. So when you consider this and use it for home defense, people talk about AR-15s or this, that, but getting shot with 9 of these or 12 of these in a home defense situation, guys, it'd be like you shot somebody 9 times with 938s or 922s. It'd be a very deadly, lethal round up close. You would kill them. There would be no chance that the intruder is going to walk out from this with double-aught buck. Like I said, that's the load. Like I said, it comes in either, you can get it with 9 balls or 12 one. This is the one that has 12. I didn't cut this one open yet, but just so you can get an idea. And it's packed with all this white stuff in there inside of it. Like you can kind of see some of it up here. You can see some of the balls there with all that white packing material inside there to keep everything nice and tight. So if you're considering using a 12 gauge or double-aught buck for home defense, believe me, it's got plenty of stopping power. Like I said, and these ain't small balls either. These I think these weigh, each one is about 50 grams, 50 grains. So, and like I said, that's 9. And most hunters or people, they do a slug first, then a double-aught buck, a slug, double-aught buck, etc., depending on what your gun holds. So that's the 12 gauge double-aught buck and the 12 gauge deer slugs. And then you have the regular other shot like 6, 7, 7.5 shot. These are the smaller BBs. These are usually for small game like squirrels, rabbits, birds, any type of like waterfowl. They even have some that for a turkey load. And those are packed in something similar to this. Well, in this, I took that one apart for you. And in that sleeve is a whole bunch of these tiny little pellets here. as you can see, there's a whole bottle cap full of them inside there. And again, even if you had that number 7 shot or number 6 shot, it tells you right on there 2 3/4, 1 ounce, 7 shots. So it's 1 ounces of lead balls. All these little tiny pellets here make up 1 ounce, like the deer slug does. Like this one here, they're all equivalent to this right here. But again, in a home defense situation, even pumping somebody with that, I mean, there's got to be 50 balls in there, maybe more. It's a whole pop cap full. And you shoot somebody that was close range, you're going to do some damage, believe me. Plus, shotguns, they're not outrageously priced. You can find them everywhere for a couple $100. You can always find ammunition for them. No matter what kind of store you go to, hunting store, sporting goods store, there's always going to be 12 gauge ammunition there. Even more than 20 gauge ammunition. So that's a 2 3/4, and then like I said, are 3 inch, 2 3/4, 3 inch, and 3.5 inch. You can see the difference from each one of them. So here, 2 3/4, 3 inch, and then 3.5 inch. And then we go over to the 20 gauge. We'll start with the 20 gauge slug. The 28 slug, or I'm sorry, the 20 gauge, that would be similar to a double-aught buck. You can see all the balls in there. Has same balls as the little smaller balls in the 12 gauge, and there's a whole. I didn't get a count of them. I should have. I forgot to count all of them. But it's a whole pop cap full of them balls there, as you can see in my hand right there. There's probably 15, 20 of them in there maybe. But still, using this for home defense, it's like you shot the guy 20 times with a 22. I would hate to get shot up close with that round right there. It'd be devastating round. It's pretty much packaged the same way as a 12 gauge is. And then the deer slug, like I said, you have your deer slug with rifling on there for the 20 gauge. And the gunpowder, it's about half of a pop cap versus the 12 gauge deer slug. There's quite a bit more gunpowder in the 12 gauge than there is in the 20 gauge. This has a wax here with some other wadding that goes inside for the slug, just like this. That's inside the hull, the shell. And again, like I said, 20 gauge always comes in yellow, so people don't accidentally put it inside their 12 gauge. I've never had that happen. I don't know I don't even know if it would even shoot out of there. The double-aught buck pellets, like I said, usually are 50 grains. And then you have, like I said, you have your 410 here. Similar packing. It comes in a wad, and it has a whole bunch of little birdshot pellets in there, like the 12 gauge one. Except for these are a little bit bigger BBs than the. It's actually the perfect size, like of a BB gun pellet. But again, you shoot somebody up close with this. There's like 40 of them in there. That person ain't going nowhere. So you could shoot somebody with a 22 and they might be able to run, but you shoot them with one of these, it's going to stop them dead in their tracks. There's no way they're not going anywhere. They're almost the same size. Like I said, the 12 gauge is a little bit bigger, but again, both deadly. It's same thing with the double-aught buck. They're 2 3/4. So a lot of people, there's always a lot of talk about, would you use one of these shotguns, a shotgun for self-defense or home defense or for hunting? And like I said, the 12 gauge is the most popular gauge in the United States as far as hunting. I killed my first 10-point buck with a deer slug, just like this one right here, about 15 years ago, I got my first, it was a 10 pointer. It was the first buck I've ever shot, and I shot it with a deer slug. So there's been hunters that, like I said, they've taken down bear with this shotgun. Not a moose, probably wouldn't kill a moose, but a bear, a big deer, you're gonna do some damage. And then, like I said, these other ones, 7, you go small game hunting with them. You don't want to destroy the animal. You can't shoot them with a double-aught buck or a deer slug. There'll be nothing left of it. You go to these number 6, number 7 shots. These are mostly for ducks, squirrels, any type of small game. You can use any of these for small game. But then, like I said, the 20 gauge, they're fairly inexpensive, and like I said, I've had this one for years. It does have a stock that I can put on there because I do use this for small game hunting sometimes. You can see it's been beat up. I've had it for I've had this for over 20 something years. This was one of my first shotguns that my dad bought me when I was just a little boy. I've had it way over 20 years. And then the 12 gauge here, which was my home defense, this was my home defense gun for probably 27, 28 years, somewhere around there. This also has a stock that's laying right there that I use this for hunting as well. You take off the pistol part on there and you put the stock on there. I took it off the other day for the demonstration of this video here. But either one of them, 12 gauge or 20 gauge, would be perfect for home defense. Like I said, you can find them anywhere. They're almost the same size. You can pick them up anywhere. Shotgun's dirt cheap. And again, it's personal preference. Some guys want a bigger caliber for home defense, but not everybody can afford those, those nice 44 Magnums and this, that. My dad had a 44 Magnum with a 10-inch barrel. He hunted with that thing and everything. But for those of you that are on the fence about whether or not a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge is good for home defense, believe me, it is. Like I said, you shoot somebody with a double-aught buck or a deer slug, you're going to stop them right in their tracks. There's no way they're not going to survive that round. And it's perfect for a home defense because, like I said, the range about 50 yards before the bullets. The farther out it goes, they spread as they go out. So they start out in a nice tight group, and the further the distance, the more they spread out. So, like I said, that shooting somebody with that double-aught buck is like you shot them 9 separate times with a 38. That's a pretty nice sized lead ball there. So, and if not, or if you use the deer slug, like I said, that's a 1-ounce rifle slug. Your barrel of your shotgun is probably rifled. They have chokes that go in there for different loads. And like I said, this is 12 gauge is very popular for hunters, especially duck hunters and geese hunters like myself. You can't shoot those kind of animals with a rifle. You destroy them, but you get the correct load for whatever it is that you're using your gun for, your shotgun for, whether it be target shooting, small game, big game. There's a round for each one of those, whatever it is that you hunt, that way you don't destroy the meat, or if you want to have the animal mounted, you don't destroy it. So there's a different load for each one. And like I said, the 410, it's a much smaller round, but it's a great round. This one's going to give you a lot less recoil than a shotgun will. And like I said, normally for every young boy, teenager, this is probably their very first gun, like it was mine. And that's about it, guys. I hope that explains it a little bit better. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more gun videos. Have a great day, everybody.